Good morning or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are located. My name is Andra Pentelechuk. I'm the Microsoft Partner Community Lead for MPC, and today I want to welcome you to the third episode of the Ask Me Anything series for service providers on how to accelerate your cloud business growth with Azure Sales Place. Today we have two speakers. We have Cindy Park, the strategy business manager focused on cloud solution provider program marketing, and also John O'Mara, senior global partner development manager. They will walk you through this topic in a moment. I would just like to remind you a few things. This is a live event. It's being recorded, and the recording will be available on the Microsoft Partner Community in the next working day. Also, stay tuned at the end. We will go through Q&A, so just make sure you use the Q&A box for dropping your questions, your comments there. The call should take about 30 minutes. So with that, let's welcome our speakers. I will get myself on mute. Cindy?
Good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session. As Andrea mentioned, my name is Cindy Park, and I am driving Global CSP Program Marketing. This session is as part of the series of the service provider webinar series, and we total have 7 sessions. And this session is the third session that we are walking through more details about the Azure opportunities and how you can accelerate your business growth with Azure Sales Place. And John will walk through very interesting, more detailed, very prescriptive information about for each sales place, that how you can grow your business and monetize with the resources that he will share. So with that, and let me hand it over to John. And hi, John.
Hey, Cindy, thank you. So I'm going to take you through we're going to focus on our top 4 sales plays for Q4 in Azure. And for those of you who are good multitaskers, there is a lot of information in these slides. So if you're capable of reading and listening at the same time, I would suggest you do so. But these came about, these are consistent from FY21, so for the period of this year, and the ones that I'm going to focus on are sales plays that from our partners are showing us that, well, these are the ones that they're seeing traction with and that their customers are in need of right now. I do have a question for you. Please feel free in the chat box to give me a thumbs up if so. But we created and launched at the start of this calendar year in January what we are calling, there are 2 names for them. We have our Azure Conversation cards and our Azure Conversion cards. They were previously named Conversion. We changed them to Conversation. But the question I have is have any of you seen or heard of these? They are built purposely to enable partners. So it would be great to get an understanding if these are things you're familiar with. These focus primarily on SMB, but you know, it's not all necessarily exclusive to SMB if you look at these sales plays. And the way in which we built them is, well, we focus on the customer pain point, that being the issue that they're having within their organization, and then we map our workloads to the solution necessary. You can see here some high-level workloads, and then indeed some of the more, I suppose, if you want to use the word, obvious services that can be attached upon those workloads. So looking at work remotely, for example, we know that it's that's an important one this year more than ever, and it's likely to stay pretty prevalent for all of us for the future, I would imagine, as we get used to a more flexible work-life balance, I suppose, as it were. And coming with that essentially is secure work, work securely. These go to hand in hand together. And then that helps us drive into the conversation of migrating to Azure. And once we're in there, of course, we have app modernization. Now, you can argue app modernization is, of course, it's not going to be relevant for every SMB customer. We do obviously have the one-man shop that won't necessarily be needing to use a whole lot of apps. But of course, we have our top unmanaged, and they need scalable services, which is what app modernization provides. So, as you can see, pain points, solution, workloads, service attached. For remote work, there's legacy applications that are limited for remote work availability. We call out what the solution is, and of course, the big play is Windows Virtual Desktop. And then you can see a list of some of the more, as I said, obvious services that you may attach, that being the virtual desktop assessment, the architecture, and of course the implementation and maintenance. If we can move to the next slide, I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper on this. So please excuse the highlighted stat at 52%. That is actually taken from pre-COVID in 2019. I could hazard a guess as to what it is now, and we will update it for our FY22 cards. But to say that 52% of the global workforce works from home at least once a week pre-COVID, I would imagine that's closer to 75%, maybe even higher. And we're looking at 4 or 5 days a week now. So the opportunity has multiplied considerably, and the challenges customers have around this, well, they remain the same. We have high costs and risks, and what I mean by that is there's a perception that cloud products are expensive and risky. And if we think about risks, there's potential business slowdown and disruptions to workflow. Then we look at the lack of collaboration and tools, or too many. Things that we mean there are, well, it's difficult to involve outside contributors, like using Teams, for example, as we are now. Without this, we couldn't have this function. Then in terms of collaboration, slowdown in development or implementation of content. Of course, difficult to access files remotely, and again, difficult to involve a growing remote workforce. All pretty important but basic things. And then, of course, the need for increased productivity. Well, that goes hands in hand. We're talking unproductive meetings. Those who can't have remote meetings previously, you're commuting, whatever it might be, to a meeting, and you realize, well, I could have just done this over the phone. Or ineffective scheduling, or inefficient co-authoring of files or file sharing. So these are all things that we know all of our customers currently are in need of. And the workloads within remote work there's a huge opportunity there now to scale. And you see, we had the few highlighted on our first slide. Now there's a bit of a deeper dive to the ones that are relevant here, in terms of, well, as I mentioned, Microsoft Teams, Windows Virtual Desktop, Azure Backup and Recovery, etc. And targeting guidance is pretty clear. It's customers who currently don't have remote work capabilities. You would hope by now those customers that need them are realizing how much they need them, and how they may need them for future. Of course, a lot of companies now have remote employees, and this also enables remote employees for employees who haven't previously been remote but would rather work remote. And I don't need to read down through all of them. I think we're aware of them. We're not sort of rewriting anything here. It's just you know, sort of making sure that what we consider to be obvious are actually being landed and leveraged. So if we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Sorry. So here, as I mentioned, there's a lot of detail. In the solution overview, it goes into quite a considerable amount of detail in terms of how do we start this conversation, you know, what are going to be the things that we want to talk about, but more along the lines of what are we enabling? So we're empowering your business, we're deploying and scaling Windows Virtual Desktop and apps on Azure. It gives you the likes of reduced management, so you're going to reduce your overall cost as time goes, complete access control. We have the likes of easy support, so your hours in IT that you may have, I mean, we all know developers are expensive. They're not focused on support. They can focus on other things like innovation, and we'll talk about that more. Then you can see a list of resources here available. And of course, we have our step-by-step accelerate wins of remote work. And this is how we're seeing to be the best practice in terms of landing a win or a sale in Azure remote work, the 1 to 6. As I said, we're limited on time, so I won't go through them all, but I plan on making these shareable. We have an email that goes out. I'll make a shareable document that we can attach in that, and you'll be able to get all of these resources and the step-by-step. This is the best practice that we're seeing of how to land the sale. So you'll be able to view that in more detail once I send these out. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So again, this is the secure work, and this really does go hand in hand with remote work. We know that it creates complexity around security, and of course there are general perceptions around security or even misconceptions, and it's quite an ambiguous piece. You know, people are less familiar with security best practices, and to be honest, oftentimes have little time to educate employees around what those best practices are. There's also an inability to identify or assess or even mitigate against security risks. You know, I know here in Microsoft, for example, we get sent random emails from a controlled Microsoft API, but they're tests to see whether or not we respond or not. And, you know, as employees, we're aware that we get these. So I think that sort of makes us look into them even further because, you know, we don't want to be tricked. But employees in smaller organizations that don't have that sort of capability, you know, the likelihood is that they are much easier targets. And now, because there's so many vendors pushing security, you know, often customers just get overwhelmed with the available offerings and they don't really know what everything means. So it's up to us to sort of simplify it. There's also, you know, there's a belief that security is incredibly expensive. And while, you know, some customers will think, well, it's worth the cost to protect my IP and whatever else, it's still a conversation that you need to have around pricing. But you know, as the landscape of a company gets bigger and more complex, I think that there's a belief, certainly outside of Azure, it's not, if you're outside of Azure, it would be the case that costs can increase around protecting those complex and larger landscapes. And it is difficult to see your return on investment by investing in security, because, you know, the give and get isn't clear. There is ambiguity there. So, you know, it's trying to make it as easy as possible and as burden, you know, as we want it to have the least burden as possible on our customer in terms of how we manage security and how we can sell it from that perspective. Because, you know, it's much more difficult to say, well, you know, you're going to save X or you're going to see this much incremental revenue, because, well, that's not really how security works. And then there's others where, well, you know, we've got very small, as I mentioned, one-stop shop, small businesses where there's a lack of priority, I suppose, on security. They don't consider small businesses to be a threat. Well, I mean, I think when we talk about security, we you know, go back to the story of small businesses not being such a threat or having such threat on them. You know, we have our own personal threat. There are bots or whatever you have out there trying to take our own personal secure information, and we're constantly warned about that. So, you know, company information is even more appealing to those who are posing those threats. And then, of course, there's simple lack of awareness around digital security and even the strategy around digital security. And it is a complex thing. And I will hold my hands up and say I'm not the subject matter expert on all of these workloads and their functionality. I'm the strategy guy. What do our customers need and how can we help them? So if there's going to be big questions on Microsoft security, I may need to go and get answers for you. But as you see here again, why Microsoft? Easily manage and access data, keep data safe, observe and protect your network. And again, these are the workloads underneath that will help mitigate risk for our customers. And again, the guidance is pretty clear. They don't have third-party security solutions. They've recently experienced a breach, those sort of customers. And we'll go deeper in again if we go to the next slide. Thank you. I'll just give it a moment and make sure everyone's caught up. It's a bit of a delay for me. Again, we have the solution overview. So securely run and grow your business. Use the cloud applications without putting your company at risk. You know, M365, it provides a simple, cost-effective way to reduce your risk with built-in privacy and compliance tools. I think that's a big one, having the tools there and available. And then protect against your threats. You know, we've got the safeguard cryptographic keys. We've got control and help secure email. I think email is a big thing now. You have, of course, again, have your conversation starters, your resources, and your accelerate wins with work securely. The 1 to 6 there again. It's not always 1 to 6, but this is again the best practice that we've seen. This is how to have a win with our work secure sales play highlighted there. And again, we'll share that. So let's move on to migration to Azure. I'm just conscious of time. So migration to Azure, looking at it again here, we have the need to reduce spend and increase agility. Again, these are old stats, so 50% of large SMBs are moving to the cloud. I think we'll see that that's considerably increased. But, you know, we've got aging hardware, software that require frequent maintenance. That's very costly for customers. The on-prem infrastructure generally carries additional costs. You know, we've got cooling hardware, backup power, physical security, etc. And then we've got cybersecurity and compliance. You know, even Microsoft themselves, we are always changing standards. The government is, the industry is, and keeping up with compliance certs is not always easy. And then, you know, you've got breaches and ransomware attacks, and migration to Azure mitigates that. We have the security within Security Center. We've got, of course, your innovation around from SQL database, and we've got the offers and programs which are crucial for customers. But there, as we highlighted previously on the first slide, there are some basic level workloads. These are the sort of deeper level workloads, and the migration to Azure targeting guidance hasn't really changed in quite a while. And we're talking, and these need to be updated. As I said, these came out for FY21, but there are customers with, you know, the likes of open source or customers who are already in Azure. That is where I would probably start. You know, they've got the propensity for migration. They already have some Azure workloads going on, but they haven't actually fully migrated. And that's sort of, for me, that they would be what I would consider the quote unquote low hanging fruit. Can we skip to the next one? I've just noticed the time here, so I really need to speed up. So again here, we have the conversation starters, the overview, the resources, a whole load of them on this one, and our accelerate wins with the migration to Azure. Again, this is the best practice that we have seen in terms of how to get a customer from how to identify for a start, and then how to land to create a proposal with them. And as I mentioned, it's going to be cost effective. You're going to pay less to get more, and we have all of the security, privacy, and business continuity that any of our customers could possibly need. And let's skip to the final one, because I know that people are going to possibly want to ask some questions. Sorry for taking so long. What we have here is app modernization, and app mod, I think, for FY22 is going to be a real focus for us, and should be therefore for you. I think we hadn't realized the percentage of ACR coming from app mod, and we also probably hadn't realized, you know, we have now, but previously probably hadn't realized the opportunity to grow that pretty high percentage, which currently sits on average probably around 10%. And it may not sound like a lot, but in SMB, to me, that does sound like quite a lot. And well, we have the two things we're seeing from customers, you know, a lack of efficiency. It's difficult to make incremental changes and updates with legacy apps. Most of their IT budgets are spent on administrative tasks, as I alluded to previously. There's no consistent service level or uptime. And if you look at the limited technical support, well, another thing that I mentioned is, well, not only is development talent expensive, it's also pretty scarce. And then there's, you know, they have lack of resources, and there is dependency on constrained IT and expert resources within their own organization. So this one is where we can really offer something that the customer doesn't have, and that is the expertise, the reduced costs, but of course the efficiency in our functionality and the ability to make those incremental changes and updates so much more fluidly when the customer is unable to do it on their legacy apps. And skipping to the final slide, again, just to highlight here, we have engaging the customers, empowering the customers. You know, we're optimizing operations and transforming the products. We have the conversation starters, the resources, and the step-by-step accelerate wins in app mod. So I know I've gone way over time there. I completely lost track. I do apologize. But if there are any questions, now would be a time for them. not opening for me.
Yeah, I'm checking the chat. Looks like there's no, there are no questions at this point. Just checking also the event page. No questions at this point.
Okay, perfect. Well, if there are any questions, I can provide my email. You can reach out to me offline. But yeah, thank you very much for your time.
John, I just before closing, I would like to ask just a quick question about there are a lot of resources per each sales play, which is really great. And so we will post the presentation so that you can leverage those. So can you just please just briefly just recap about what would be the most effective way to use those resources and what would be your recommendation for the next steps with the audience?
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of resources. And I suppose it depends on the level of expertise within an organization, Cindy. The resources there are there are resources for people who wouldn't have, let's take WVD for example, or migration to Azure. There are things there where people are simply saying, you know, what is this? And they're at that level. And then we have resources that go into the deep underlying understanding of how the product works, how it's deployed, etc., etc. So it will really depend on what your own level is or who within your organization is using these resources. Not all of them are going to be relevant to somebody who has some level of expertise, who's worked on it before, etc., etc. The ones that I would focus on would be where we have in the if you could just go back to the previous slide, if that's possible. So there are links within the Accelerate Wins on each of the slides, and my advice would be to start there. I would leverage those first because that is really the path that you want to find. As long as you have the knowledge around what the product offers, etc. First, I would say start by using the resources that are highlighted in your step-by-step Accelerate Wins.
Great, thank you. And also, as probably all the audiences would know, that there is our marketing campaign in a sales plays campaign in a box resources that we have been actually sharing with you. So when we post this deck, we will also share those links so that you can combine it with those accelerating wins resources and also campaign in a box resources so that you can readily leverage those for your go-to-market and selling motion. There is one other question that I saw in the chat box that when confirming Windows Virtual Desktop, do you have to consider the VMs or does it come with the product?
Yes, you will have to consider VMs.
Got it. Thank you for the answer, John.
Oh, do I need to? Yeah, that can be heard. I was gonna.
Yes, yeah. So you don't need to write the answer. Yeah, it can be. It's okay to just share with voice. Okay, so with that, I would like to thank you everyone for joining this session. As I mentioned, that we will share those recording and presentation on the site, the webinar site. And again, thank you. And I wanted to also remind you to register next webinars. In the next webinar next Wednesday, we are going over the modern work, more detailed stage plays, and how you can go to market. Okay, thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, Cindy and John. Thank you for the presentation and also for all the resources. All thank you for your time and joining this event. The link with the upcoming events is in the chat. So with that, I wish you a wonderful day ahead, and we will conclude the session. Goodbye.
Thank you.